Have you ever noticed that people will share articles online that have eye-catching headlines or titles, but they'll share it without actually reading what they're sharing? We have another one of these stories today in our latest episode of End Times Watch. This one I could have easily titled, That's So 2020, because of the absurdity of the story in question, and because if the people in our story today are actually successful, then they might add to the cosmic horror that 2020 has been so far. So let's dive into this story from Switzerland about parallel universes and demonic portals, because this story is not either what the headline implies or what the men working to make this happen expect it to be. Our story takes us to Geneva, Switzerland, to the Large Hadron Collider. If for some reason you're not familiar with this device, it is the largest atom smasher or particle accelerator that is publicly acknowledged to exist in the world today. I say it that way because we should never assume that some governments haven't built larger ones and haven't told anyone about them yet. This machine is the one at the CERN Center in Geneva, which has been the subject of a lot of interesting stories over the years. Clearly, our writer here is playing off of those, because this is a pretty vanilla story, all things considered. Headline from ScienceNatures.com. Researchers at Large Hadron Collider are confident to make contact with parallel universe in days. No author attribution is given to this article, which should be your first warning. Now, without reading the article, you can see why I would call this an End Times Watch story, sort of like the flying saucer video I did last month. But let's have a look at the article. Quote, if successful, a very new universe is going to be exposed, modifying completely not only the physics books, but the philosophy books too. It is even probable that gravity from our own universe may transfer into this parallel universe, researchers at the LHC say. The experiment is assured to accentuate alarmist critics of the LHC, many of whom initially warned the high-energy particle collider would start the top of our universe with the making of its own. But up to now, Geneva stays intact and securely outside the event horizon. End quote. Now, as an aside, there were a lot of typos in that article, which made it actually kind of hard to read. Come on, guys, you can do better. Anyway, first thing we have here is an example of how silly this whole thing is. They give you a headline about parallel universes, and then they make a dig at the people who keep saying, slow down, guys, maybe what you're doing isn't the greatest idea ever. But let's continue. Quote, no doubt the LHC has been outstandingly successful. First, researchers proved the existence of the mysterious Higgs boson quote-unquote God particle, a key building block of the cosmos, and it's seemingly well on the thanks to revealing dark matter, a previously untraceable theoretical prospect that's now believed to form up the foremost of matter within the universe. But next week's experimentation is reflected to be a game-changer. Mir Faisal, one man in the group of 3 strong physicists working behind this experiment, like I said, this thing really is badly written, said, quote, just as many parallel sheets of paper which are two-dimensional objects, breadth and length, can exist during a dimension, height, parallel universes can even exist in higher dimensions. We predict that gravity can leak into extra dimensions, and if it does, then miniature black holes are produced at the LHC. Normally, when people consider the multiverse, they think about the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics, where every possibility is actualized. This cannot be tested, so it is a philosophy and not science. This is often not what we mean by parallel universes. What we mean is real universes in extra dimensions. As gravity can infuse of our own universe into the additional dimensions, such a model may be tested by the detection of mini black holes at the LHC. End quote. Okay. It's a philosophy, not a science. I mean, I get it. He's talking about, Earth 2, Earth 3, Earth 4, but come on. Once upon a time, all the scientists of the world were also trained philosophers. They were trained in philosophy. It was essential to studying what reality is. Now, not so much, and I honestly get nervous when these guys start talking about philosophy. Notice something. Faisal declares as fact the existence of parallel universes. It's a fact. They're not testing to see if they exist, they assume that they do. They cite the creation of miniature black holes at the Large Hadron Collider, the LHC, as proof of this. Then there's the phrase, this cannot be tested, so it's a philosophy, not a science. No philosopher would say that philosophy cannot be tested, so be wary of these kinds of statements. The rest of that article is physics and astrophysics tech talk that is really only understandable by men like Faisal, which is fine, but that's not relevant to our discussion here. But let's get real for a second. Are they going to open a door to a parallel dimension? Probably not. And if they do, it probably won't be to a good and happy, fun place. Pro tip, if the men working on this project are listening, if you smell sulfur, shut the operation down. If you hear things like out of a horror film, shut it down. You might have found a back way into what the children at Fatima witnessed firsthand when the Blessed Virgin Mary showed them perdition, but without the benefit of divine protection. That may sound silly to some, but remember, they're taking as fact that parallel universes exist, but then mitigating the statement by saying it's a philosophy because it's unprovable. This is the kind of take that makes me hurt inside. And then you see this article getting shared widely online. I've seen a lot of people share this, and few, if anyone, commenting on it beyond having bothered to read it. If they'd had, they'd not be dealing with increased anxiety over it. Then again, it is 2020, right? What else could possibly go wrong this year? Even saying that feels a bit like I'm tempting the Lord, but to a degree, it is something to consider. It is, to a certain degree, pretty reasonable for people to react negatively to this story. But again, the "it's 2020, please don't do this year" line we see repeated often is frankly superstitious, born from the present circumstances and the activities of the agents of chaos and all the rest of it that we're all so tired of. On top of all the flying saucer stories making the rounds right now, people are expecting some very strange things to happen by the end of the year. So this story honestly just adds to it. And to a degree, they should, because there have been numerous breakthroughs at the Large Hadron Collider. This year, in fact, including reportedly making matter from light, if you can believe that. Still, other reports are being made by various kinds of ministers and others saying that the collider proves the existence of God, which is itself a stunning admission of the state of catechesis in our day and age when Christians of any stripe are relying on something like this to prove that God exists, when pure philosophy can do the trick. Aquinas' proofs and arguments for the existence of a God have yet to be disproven. Many have tried, and some have claimed success, only to be answered by those with an actual grounding in metaphysics and philosophy more broadly. All of this is to say, maybe keep an eye on this story, but there is a 99% chance that nothing of any importance in your life will come from this. So when you see this article making the rounds on Twitter or Facebook, don't get worried about it. Maybe give it a laugh react on Facebook. Just accept that these are the ruminations of men with huge budgets who get to play with fancy and very dangerous equipment, and whose job it is to justify their work and use of resources first and foremost. That's it. Will they open a door to another dimension? Probably not. But if they do, it's much more likely to resemble the unpleasant places in Scripture than it is to be another universe. Take that to the bank. And if you want something to pay attention to that might be worth watching, but not for the reasons that you might expect, keep an eye on that flying saucer story that is now being reported widely that's coming straight from the government. But that's an End Times Watch episode for another day. Thank you for listening. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.